Доброго дня. У нас припинилося.
Good afternoon. Is the broadcast off?
Ми в ефірі?
Are we on? Are we not on yet?
Ага. Так, пане Олександре, доброго дня.
Alexander, good afternoon. We are happy to see you here at the interview. I think that we will move on to the main presenter in your case. This is Laura Stefan in your case. Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tatiana, and hello, Mr. Skomarov. Pleasure to have this conversation with you today. Please feel free to use headphones for translation if need be. I will start with an introductory question. According to your biography, since October 2015, you have been working in various positions in NABU. In 2016, you were promoted as senior detective in NABU, and in 2017, you became a deputy head of the second division of detectives of the main division of detectives. During this period, you defended your dissertation to obtain a science degree in 2017 and co-authored a monography published in the same year. In 2021, you obtained the right to act as a lawyer, to engage in legal practice after undergoing an internship of 6 months for this purpose. Additionally, you are a proud father of 2 children. We look at all these activities and we want to open up with a question regarding your evaluation of how doable is this to be involved in law enforcement, in private lawyers' practice, in academia, and whether you intend to keep up this diversity of activities should you be appointed as the head of an ACP.
Дякую за ваше запитання.
Thank you for your question.
Ви все правильно сказали про мій
You are right about my career path
роботу, яку я
and about my scientific work that I have finished and successfully completed, and about my work as a barrister, and I will explain you briefly why I do all these things. In 2015, before starting the bureau, I started a PhD for the prosecutors.
Після практичної роботи
And after
майже
working
9 місяців я займався написанням науково-дисертаційного дослідження.
practically for about 9 months, I was writing my PhD thesis, and I dedicated almost all my time to this because for a PhD student, this is the main task that they are doing.
Будучи звиклим до постійної
But
напруженої роботи,
being used to constant
ніяких труднощів
high-stress work, academia was not difficult for me, except, the guidelines that seemed a little bit too bureaucratic for me, and the rules have been changing a lot. But
Отже, завершивши певну досить велику частину своєї роботи,
having finished a large piece of my thesis,
30 сторінок на місяць,
I wanted to write at least 30 pages a month at the time. So to have this average speed of 1 page a day, it's very relative if people understand what I mean.
що не хотів довго
Because I did not want to take a lot of time to write my thesis. I wanted to
роботи, оскільки
move on to practical work because
мале
a PhD student does not receive a lot of money and the life is not
шикарне, тому треба
very luxurious. So you need to work quickly, finish quickly, and to defend your thesis quickly. So
створено НАБУ.
when I was studying for PhD, NABU was created and the first selection was announced for the positions in NABU. And because I took interest in this topic, you know that the topic of my thesis is also related to the National Bureau, I decided to take part in the competition, and I became one of the first 70 detectives of NABU after I successfully passed the competition. And then I moved in the bureau
Посаду, яку займаю,
and now I am in the position that I am. You well know about that. In 2017, combining it with practical work, I was able to complete my dissertation because I allocated the time, and it was quite important for me to finish it. It was very relevant at the time, the topic. Now there are many work that covers that, but while being a full-time student, I wrote almost half of the thesis. So in the next 2 years, I was able to complete it, and I defended it, wanted to defend it, and I had a successful defense of the thesis as a result. Well, continued to work in a practical position. Then on my lawyer's certificate, I wanted to receive the certificate, and the law does not prevent you from doing that. I know that my public service will not be forever, and I'm not planning to work in public service until I retire. At least that's what it seems. At least, you know, that's what I think about it. I do not have in my bank accounts or under my mattress some certain amount of money that will allow for my family to exist. If I lose a job or if I finish working as a public official voluntarily, I wanted to have a document that will give me the right next day after I stop being a public servant to earn for the livelihood of my family. And that's why I took the bar exam and I received the certificate. And I stopped this after I received this immediately. And this also confirms my qualifications, and they confirmed that I have the knowledge that allows me to defend the most valuable things that we have, the rights and freedom of people. My thesis, I did not continue academic work after I defended my thesis because I need quite a lot of time to do that. And it took me my free time to write the thesis, and there's it's not a lot of time. I usually took out Sundays and nighttime. Saturdays was a no-go. It was either at night or during Sunday. And after I finished, because there was a lot of, I don't know if everybody has this in the academia, this burnout. When you successfully finish your thesis, then you don't want to start doing anything post-PhD because you have this kind of fatigue in this case. And because my practical work is also very stressful and you don't have a lot of free time, and I also want to spend time with the family and have some time for myself, I don't work in academia right now. For the future, if the time and the circumstances allow, I could be doing something related to academia, but I have not made this decision and I'm not sure about that. Thank you. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's discuss a little bit the part about the lawyer certificate. So according to the Unified State Register of Lawyers, based on the decision of the Kiev Regional Bar Association number 86 for 2021, you have been issued a certificate for legal practice. And according to the law in Ukraine for legal practice, you have to undergo an internship with a full-fledged lawyer in order to be allowed to become a practicing lawyer. In your response to our inquiry, you gave us explanations regarding your internship. You said that you have worked during evenings and weekends. And you also provided information about the lawyer with whom you did your internship. According to the website of the law firm, we understand that the supervisor of your internship specializes in criminal law and criminal procedure. My first question is whether you see a conflict of interest between the fact that you work as a law enforcement officer and also at the same time have done an internship with the lawyer specialized in criminal law and criminal proceedings, especially since according to the intern's diary daily journal that you have submitted, you say that you have prepared procedural documents for the lawyer. So that's the first question.
Дякую за запитання. Ні, я не вбачаю, що в цьому є
Thank
конфлікт.
you. No, I do not see any conflict of interest in that. A conflict of interest doesn't mean that if a lawyer practices criminal law, nobody from law enforcement can be in touch with that person. A conflict of interest can be potential or real if a lawyer is on the defense or is representing a specific case. We did not have such instances with the head of my practice. The head of this practice or internship, it's not a buddy or a relative. It's a person who is a mentor, who checks the knowledge, who checks how the plan is implemented, who controls the process. So I do not see a conflict of interest here.
Дякую. The second question is just a question for clarification. Can you tell the Commission whether during your internship your supervisor had any cases where he involved you, of course, where NABU was the investigative body?
Мені невідомо про такі справи.
I do not know of such cases where my head of my practice was the person where we only communicated about my work, his cases in his criminal law practice were not really discussed with me. We didn't discuss details, but maybe some broad categories without being without names or details used. We just wanted to have a discussion on broader issues. That part of my practice in the individual plan, which was about criminal law and criminal proceedings, I think we did all we were supposed to do for my individual plan, but that was the least of our discussions because I specialize in that and I know that legislation no worse than my mentor. And that's why the highlight was in administrative issues and the civil code, European Court on Human Rights, legal practice. So these were the items on my individual plan that were discussed more.
Thank you. So you say you worked more on civil issues and administrative issues and European Court of Human Rights issues, correct, rather than criminal. Now, going a little bit further about your individual plan, we learned that during November and December 2020, you devoted to your internship about 300 hours, 295 hours to be more precise. That equals about 38 days. 8 hours per day. So again, I'd like to ask you, how did you manage to combine the work at NABU during those months with the internship? Have you taken vacation? What's the explanation?
Індивідуальний план стажування.
My individual plan for this practice didn't mean that I had to spend the 300 hours studying a textbook or a draft decision or something. I received tasks that I needed to do or theoretical questions that I needed to study, and I was not required to really sit for 300 hours on the record without moving. I thought about these issues. I did some tasks. I read theoretical materials outside of my office. But yeah, I didn't spend like 300 years sitting at my desk and studying that. Can I ask for a clarification? So this 295 hours, this is the plan, which is, well, average. That's what the Regional Association of Lawyers has, and That's a nominal requirement and you could do it faster. Yes, exactly.
Okay, it's still surprising to me that within 2 months, even if you do it faster, you manage to complete this nominal requirement of the bar associations. Anyhow, let's move forward. We noticed that in your internal daily journal, the references to you are made as if a woman was writing the journal. Can you explain this slip to the Commission?
Через те, що великий час пройшов, я зараз не
It's
можу.
been a long time. I will not be able to provide you with some very clear explanations. Maybe it's because I took samples or templates for specific types of information and I entered information that's relevant for me and may have missed it somewhere. That's possible. But once again, it's been quite some time, so I would not be able to remember now.
Thank you. That was also the line of thought that we followed, but I wanted to confirm with you. Now, moving to financial issues, in your 2019 declaration, you declare savings of your wife amounting to approximately $50,000. Can you explain the origin of these funds?
Так, звісно. Я познайомився зі своєю дружиною
I
у
met my wife in 2018. In 2019, we married and we started living together. So in my declaration in 2019, I stated her as well. Then we were buying real estate, on which I was asked to clarify as well. Now, the funds, what my wife and my father-in-law told me before we met, the family of my father-in-law had 50,000 American dollars as savings. That was done to support their daughter to buy a flat, an apartment for her in Kyiv and to do some repair. They acquired these funds from economic activities of my father-in-law and his family, and also from selling an apartment in the center of Kyiv in Lavra Street. This is very close to Kyiv-Pechersk Lavra, and from selling a land plot in Kyiv, which had been sold by the parents of my father-in-law, and he inherited the money and the apartment. Before we met, my wife-to-be was gifted these funds. The funds were stored taken care of by my father-in-law to make sure they were safe and secure. And then when the family decided to buy the apartment, I was not yet in the picture, so I was not a co-owner. And then they decided that they would use these funds to buy an apartment, and my wife could use that. And in 2019, after our marriage, we bought it. Well, my wife had a preliminary agreement of buying a piece of property, and she used 28,500, more or less, of American dollars, and then 19,000 remained.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We learned that between July 2017 and September 2018, your wife worked as an assistant to the general director of the television company Studio 1+1. From September 2018 till approximately November 2019, effectively, your wife also worked as a product manager at Plus TV, which is part of the holding 1+1. As you well know, since 2017, NABU has been conducting pre-trial investigations in several criminal cases regarding the ultimate beneficial owner of the media holding 1+1, Mr. Holomoisky. Have you ever felt you were in a vulnerable situation? While your wife was working with the Media Trust and you were working in NABU, did you feel like this was a conflict of interest? Have you felt any undue pressure linked to this, let's say, combined professional interests?
Дякую за ваше запитання.
Thank you for the question. Yes, when I met my wife, she was working as a general director assistant with the Studio 1+1. Two young people meet. They have to learn each other a bit better, and then they will inform who works where. That's true. In 2018, she worked as an assistant of the general director. After that, she transferred. Yeah, I provided my explanations from which you read. She became a product manager, and she basically worked before she went on a maternity leave in the end of 2019. First, it was a leave because of the pregnancy, and then she went on a maternity leave until the child reaches 3 years of age. And she left this place right after the baby turned 3. So summarizing all of that, in 2018 we met. We were not very close to each other. We didn't know about families. Well, before we got married, and she still can, I think that we have to follow the presumption that we have freedom of choice. But she could work wherever she wanted then, which she did. She changed the job, which is even further away from the end beneficiary. She was a manager, nothing related to the management. She was promoting online TV. And after a very short period of time, she stopped working because of the maternity leave and then didn't return. We never talked about any issues related to work. At that time, the end beneficiary was not under prosecution. And even after that, it did not help him to avoid receiving his accusations, and he's now being investigated in terms of activities of this company. So it didn't save him from anything, from getting on board the plane or being internationally searched. So we don't see any kind of conflict of interest, professional or ethical.
Yet I feel that you did reflect about this, and some choices were made. One of the partners opting for a different type of professional path. Another question that refers to your family, this time to your sister, which we learned that was a suspect in a criminal case investigated by NABU. And that in 2019, when the judge was asked to determine a preventive measure against your sister, you served as a guarantor for your sister in this NABU investigation. Now, we all understand that families work in certain ways, but I want to ask you whether you felt that there was an image or a conflict of interest, at least a perceived conflict of interest, between you being a detective in NABU and you serving at the same time as a guarantor for a suspect investigated by your colleagues. So if you want to discuss this briefly with the commission.
Да, дякую за ваше запитання.
Yes, thank you for this question. I will confirm that what you were talking about happened. And answering that question, I would talk about several things. First of all, legal aspects. Article 180 of Criminal and Procedural Code of Ukraine describes this preventative measure, and it says that the people who are express a written commitment have to be good people or a people of special trust. So that's about good people who commit to make sure that the suspect does the duty. And if that doesn't happen, there are fines which are quite significant, first of all. Now, the conflict of interest as seen by the law. At that moment, legally, I was not connected to this criminal proceeding in any way. It was done by any body of pre-court investigation. Legal conflict of interest is not here at all because I was not part of this criminal procedure at all. Then, when I became the deputy head of that department, I immediately wrote a report about the presence of the conflict of interest, and that was regulated because I was limited in my access to information on this criminal proceeding, and it went to court. So, going back to the conflict of interest question.
Наступний елемент – це морально-етична складова.
The next element is the moral and ethical component of this issue. And according with unwritten moral code, the members of the family must support each other in different situations. And if this also happens according to, with strict adherence of the law, then, we should honor and praise such people. And in this case, I did not violate any requirement of the law. I did not make any statements that somehow discredit the pretrial investigating body, prosecutor body, or other participants of the criminal proceedings. My position was only about grounds for selecting the strictest way of keeping her in prison pre-trial, and my task was not to allow this procedural mistake, so that the person who is still not going to run anywhere and is not confirmed to have committed the crime end up in prison. Of course, they did not allow me, but the court also did not make this procedural mistake, and then they just selected the measure for her to stay at home during the night, and this was what they selected instead of putting her in prison. This situation, some may like it, some may not like it. I can allow that. Of course, being the head of an ACP or in the position that I currently in, I would not have done that because it was not an impulsive choice. Then I have analyzed and thought about that before doing that. But in any way, I did what I did. I don't regret it. And I would do it again if there were ideal circumstances for that. As of right now, this criminal proceedings has been closed by the court, and now there is an appeals court that's looking into. I've finished with my answer.
Just a question of clarification. Do I understand correctly that later on you became the head of the detective unit that was investigating your sister? Did I understand correctly? And it was then when you disclosed this conflict of interest?
Ні. Я не став головою підрозділу, я став
No,
заступником.
I did not become the head of the department. I became the deputy director, and this is second person in those of formally, legally, this investigative team and all of this main division became my subordinates in other criminal proceedings and in operative activities. And it is just like this until today. But regardless of that, the criminal proceedings were closed according to the legislation. I did not intervene there, not once. And it's quite difficult to imagine this in the other bodies, but this is what happened. It was very lawful and with a lot of integrity there. And until today, those persons who investigated this, they keep working. They don't feel any pressure. They're doing quite well. And I think this is exemplary behavior in public service. If it happened, you know, we can't be held responsible for the actions of our relatives who've come of age. So, you know, luckily we don't live in communist China or in North Korea. Every adult can decide for themselves how they want to act, and we're not held responsible for that. And again, this criminal proceedings was closed, and this person has been deemed not guilty. Maybe so that the Competition Commission don't have any doubts about the future or my future, her future. My sister quit public service voluntarily, and she's not planning to go back. So if I become the head of an ACP, we will not cross our paths at work, definitely.
Just to clarify, it was far from me the idea of suggesting that, you know, you're guilty or responsible for your sister. I understand that even the court has denied your quality as a guarantor for your sister for various reasons. I brought this up for discussion mostly in order to assess and think about, reflect upon the impact that your position might have had over the investigative team that was investigating your sister. And I think you have answered to the extent possible this concern that we had. Moving to another question. On December 2021, your mother registered the ownership of an apartment in Kiev, the price of which was declared to be $25,000 at the day of signing the contract. It was a barter agreement, and the apartment was actually acquired under an investment agreement. According to tax data, your mother income between 1998 and 2023 was approximately $2,500. So first of all, we would ask you to reflect on the source of funds that your mother had in order to buy this apartment. And then also, according to public data, we looked at similar apartments and in that particular residential area, and we learned that a 40 square meter apartment would be around $93,000, and a 67 square meter apartment would be around $137,000. So it seems to us that even if the apartment was in a very poor state and needed repair, it's still very low in terms of other prices in the same area. So two issues: the source of funds and the evaluation of the price in comparison to similar prices.
Да, дякую за ваше запитання.
Yes, thank you for your question. First, where the money came from, of course, I confirm that this apartment costs not as the amount that is stated in my declaration, because as a person who declares something, it must be based on the documents and not about my ideas about the cost of something. The same about the car. If you have any questions, I'll explain later. When filling in the declaration, I based on the documents And you know, the registry on ownership of property says that it costs that it says. And then, as far as I know from my mother's words, it was a new building. There were two agreements, one agreement on the share in the cooperative and another agreement. I can't be quite specific about that. If there was a question, I would clarify. A derivative, I think. It was derivative. I know, and the cost is almost similar. I know that in the equivalent to US dollars, the cost was about $70,000 when it was purchased from the construction company. If it was a construction company or if it was a share in the cooperative, but at the moment when this apartment was bought. So where the money for this apartment came from? The purchase of this apartment, I will be going back in time. Before that, my mother sold a one-room apartment in the same apartment complex. She also bought it at the stage of construction, and after she bought it, it became more expensive. And she had the documents ready for ownership, but she sold it for the amount of about $60,000. And it happened, if I'm not mistaken, in 2020. The sources to buy the first apartment, one-room apartment, at the time, it cost between $35,000 and $40,000 in hryvnia. Those were the money that my parents received when they sold a shop in Luhansk Oblast. Starting from the 90s, they were in private business. First, my father, and then my mother, when she retired, she joined that business. They had, in the central part of the city of Luhansk, they had a foodstuff and non-foodstuff shop, a mixed one. And in 2010s, they sold this shop for the amount that was the equivalent of $50,000 US. Of course, we do all operations in national currency, but we have this old habit of counting everything in foreign currency equivalent, because unfortunately this is the worldview that Ukrainians still have. So yeah, the amount was equivalent to $50,000 US. Since some of this money was spent for building the apartment, and after it became more expensive, there were 10 more thousand added, and the two-room apartment was purchased.
I think we only have, I think you refer to two contracts. With regard to this apartment. I think we only have one. It would be very useful if we could be supplied with a second one. And also, can you clarify whether this is a one-room, a two-room apartment, a three-room apartment? Because I think there's still a significant difference between the regular price and even $70,000. So how big is this apartment, so that we have an idea of what we're talking about?
Ця перше, щодо другого договору.
On the second contract, as far as my mom has let me know, she has a technical passport for the apartment, this barter agreement, but she doesn't have a derivative. I just think that the original copy went back to the construction company. I wasn't present there, but that's what I think has happened. That's one thing. And then this is an apartment of 63 square meters that was purchased. You can just look in historically how much it cost, not how much they cost now. This I don't want to do a negative advertising, but it's a little bit overpriced. I'm very happy that this investment has grown and it can be sold. But at the time, it was the amount in equivalent to $70,000. I think if they sold it, for 20,000, she would be happy to buy it for 20,000. But for now, this apartment complex has grown. They're building the fourth line, and my mom's apartment is in the second line. And as infrastructure develops, as they build new lines and this district grows, the cost of property continues growing. If we give a good estimation of this apartment complex, it's a concrete ghetto in a way, but it looks very well if you look from the outside. And indeed, the price is high as of right now. One-room apartment that is fully furnished, it costs about $68,000-$70,000 in hryvnia. I know this because I have a chat on Telegram. I'm interested. I'm reading up on property costs. And a two-room apartment without renovation, it costs about $90,000 to $100,000 US. Sellers, they usually mention the prices in dollars. I don't know how the contracts are. This is the reality. I cannot change that.
I mean, it would be very useful for us, even if you don't have the exact contract, to give us a written explanation where you refer to it, and maybe you also consult your mother. I mean, to be honest, I find it weird that the value of this particular apartment has increased between December 2021 and present. From what we heard from other candidates in other interviews, the prices tend to go down, not up, in the past 2 years. Anyhow, moving to the next question, we learned that according to your declaration from 2023, you have received financial assistance from NABU in value of approximately $4,000. Can you explain to us the purpose of such assistance? What does it consist of? Why you benefited from it?
Матеріальна допомога для вирішення
The
соціальних
material aid for receiving social and everyday issues is given according to the legislation of Ukraine, and every head of the department and top management member, they have the right to receive such aid. You need to apply. There's the commission that reviews it and makes the decision whether to provide you material aid or not. On November 25th of 2023, I had a second child born, which requires additional spending for the birth and for everything else. And I applied, provided my reasons. The commission made the decision and received the aid and declared it diligently.
Thank you, and congratulations on your second child. Well, thank you very much for bearing with us. And I do understand that some of these questions come across as unpleasant and intrusive. I want to assure you that we're raising these issues for the sake of transparency, so that everybody that may have similar questions can receive an answer from you and not create answers for themselves based on the information that is out there. So I would like to thank you very much for your openness and transparency today.
Так, і я думаю, що у нас ще є запитання від пана
And
Андрія.
I also think that Andriy has an additional question. Not too many questions. The first one is regarding your sister. How did you find out that this problem took place, happened with her? She gave a call to me and she let me know that she was apprehended. Every person, according to the Criminal Procedural Code, a person has a right for a call, and she did that. She informed not our parents because they are elderly and it can negatively reflect on their health, but she informed me. And what did you do? I recommended her the lawyers. And what happened next? Do you have the agreement of sale of the shop that you mentioned? I will ask my mother, but I think that hardly. Do you know maybe there are any thing in the registries about this shop? I can also ask her about that. If I find something, please let me know the deadline. I think that you definitely have 2 or 3 days. Thank you. Another question
Стосовно власної квартири.
on the apartment itself.
Ви кажете, що опціон, він же дериватив.
You say that
сума,
the derivative
так мовити, вартості
and
квартири
the amount were almost
Так,
equal.
фактично був такого
So basically, the previously,
Ні, я
the
просто
cost that you put there previously, I'm just
думаю.
thinking aloud now.
Питання таке.
The question is the following one.
В якому році взагалі було сплачено цей
When
за дериватив, скажімо так?
was the money for the derivative paid?
21-го, наскільки я
Кошти за
розумію.
квартиру
It did not happen in 2021. It was paid in 2020.
продана і нова в 20-му
It-
придбана.
The previous one was sold in 2020 and the new one was bought in 2020. And you say that this was the first line of the apartment complex. Both the one room that was sold and the two room that was purchased, they were in second line, but in different buildings. The building that had a one-room apartment, it was ready for use and ready to transfer ownership rights. And the next building where the two-room apartment was bought, it was not yet ready to use officially at the moment that the contract was signed, and only in December 2021, the ownership rights were transferred. There was a question regarding that. So this is the reason why I started living there earlier. I need to declare where I live. This is,
Я
thank you.
бачу, що у членів комісії відсутні.
I see that the members of the Commission do not have additional questions to you, Alexander. Thank you for the interview. We are looking forward to receiving the documents from you in case you find them, and we wish you success. We will need a technical break of 5 minutes before we invite our next candidate.